what's up, folks? I'm gonna be watching Foundations and the next one. Yeah, more Magnus Archives happening. I'm doing shit. I'm trying to memorize poems that we're doing this thing called Poetry Out Loud in my school, and I want to be able to do it. And I want to be productive, and there's only a week left of winter break, and I'm freaking out because I have so much stuff to do. So, usually, the thing with podcasts is that usually it's a good thing to try to do things during them, and that's the convenience of listening to podcasts. So, most of my reactions, I'm going to be trying to do something during them. So, I'm sorry if you mind a little unconventional reaction videos. But I'm gonna be listening to episodes 50 and 51, which basically means at this point I am officially 1/4 through the series, I think. Fuck, that's awful. 1/4 through the entire series. I don't like the thought of it ending. I thought it was still going when I started, so that's when I figured that it ended like this year. I was like, what? I was like, existential dread. I hate things ending. I hate when there's nothing left of things. But I guess I'm excited for AO3 because I've been like, I swear I started seeing Magnus Archives on AO3. Like, some of my favorite authors were writing for Magnus Archives instead of my fandoms, and I was like, why? And also, what is that? So I was like, interesting. But that was like 2 years ago or something. So like, I have no clue which authors they were. I like forgot. But it's interesting, you know. I'm excited for that scene, I guess, after I'm done, because I don't want to get spoiled, because usually I go on fucking AO3 and I get all the spoilers ever. That's what happened with MHA, My Hero Academia. But now I'm gonna watch stuff. What happened before fucking Michael? Scary shit. That was cool. I've been thinking about it this whole time. Jonathan seems to have noticed the warning about Sasha, which I didn't pick up on last time, that he warned about Sasha, and I was like, so maybe... Well, that means he isn't behind it. So one of my friends is playing. Okay, let's ignore that. But, so... I'm assuming he isn't behind it because he warned about it. So who is behind Sasha not being Sasha? Like, someone. Interesting. So the poetry. Yeah, I wonder how weird it's gonna be if I just start whispering the lines during the episode. Will it be like extremely terrifying if I start doing that? Who knows? Okay. I also want to higher the volume because I don't know if it's okay. Let's see. Fucking Sims. I'm gonna do Foundations and High Pressure. Samson Kempthorne.
We really solve murder cases because nobody else is doing it.
Oxygen knows that in the world of true crime, some women uphold the law.
We want to see justice done.
Some women break the law.
Let's see. Because it was low last time. But at least you can sync it if you try. It looks really low. Try higher the volume. It's very low volume. I'm gonna lower my volume and see if it like tries to match it.
Original statement given June 12, 1841. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute.
Let's see if I can level out the volume. Work as architecture. Okay, volume. Let's see. Can I highlight? Let's see. How's that? Ooh. Let's see if that works.
London. Statement begins.
Okay. Let's see if this is good.
It is my fondest wish
Okay.
this message should find you in good health.
Jonathan Sims'
Although I've
voice.
heard more than one mutual acquaintance remark
He's
on
been
your
possessed by the
courage and
statement.
work. While I earnestly hope if it is merely idle gossip, my knowledge of your character leads me to entreat that you allow yourself some respite. Or at the very least to take some further secretarial staff into your employ.
Okay, let's see.
Certain uncharitable quarters would have it that your life consists of little but rattling around an Edinburgh townhouse surrounded by piles of ghostly accounts and lunatic documentation. Piles, I am afraid to say, to which I am about to make an addition. I would suggest you come visit with myself and Marianne as a diversion, but if you are of a mind to do so, you must travel swiftly. You see, we are shortly to depart for New Zealand, prepare to start a new life, far from London and its workhouse. And it is this imminent departure that has had such a freeing effect upon my pen. For there are things I have seen which I feel deserve a place among your asylum of letters. They regard the works of my former assistant, George Gilbert Scott, whose own architectural practice is now most respected. I have been fearful that accusations of slander might dog me were my tale to be set down, but with a boat to the New World beckoning and your sterling reputation for discretion, I feel it may at last be time to divest myself of the disquieting scenes I have witnessed. George came to me in 1834 for his engagement with the office of Henry Roberts, where he was completing his training. Henry himself I have the greatest respect for, as he trained under Sir Robert Smirke, who had received his knighthood not 2 years previous. Henry was very effusive about the talents and prospects of young Mr. Scott, and was at great pains to inform me that his young protégé had also received certain architectural tutelages from Sir Robert himself. He said this with the oddest of looks, as though there was some jolly secret between us. I rather just nodded, as if to say I took his meaning, and he left well enough alone. He even showed me George's work on drafting his plans for the Fishmonger's Hall near London Bridge, which had opened to great acclaim. It certainly seemed clear to me that he would make a fine assistant, at least for as long by the Poor Law Commissioners, if it was an undertaking I embarked on with no small amount of zeal. My original designs were intended to assist in the easy segregation of inmates by sex, age, or infirmity, with capacity and utility foremost in my mind. I know many look on the workhouse with disdain,
Yeah, I put it downstairs.
and seeing very little distinction between the workhouse and the prison. But this is a deeply myopic view to take. The prison
Goodness.
for the safety and improvement of society at large, while the workhouse exists for the improvement of the inmates themselves. To criticize the conditions as harsh is to overlook the basic moral imperative of work itself, and I firmly believe that to dismiss the punitive as a valid form of moral improvement is to consign many a poor soul to perdition. But I digress, John. I am so used to penning defenses of my designs that it seems I can write little which does not do so. It was in his assistance with these designs that George first began to show those peculiarities of character that I would become so ill at ease with. His process redrafting was deeply unsettling. He would spend hours in the office simply staring at the drawings, saying nothing, taking no food or drink, and ignoring any inquiry or interruption. Then, in a single move, he would gather up all the papers and retire to his private office, locking the door behind him. Then, from the other side of that firm oak door, I would hear the strangest sounds, muttering and shouting. It was always in George's voice alone. I could never quite discern the words. It often sounded as though he were in some great distress, and on more than one occasion I was within minutes of summoning a constable to assist in breaking through the door, when he would emerge, glistening from exertion and holding completely redone drawings. I'm sure I even saw blood on his collar once. The designs themselves were little
Evil architecture time.
take the solid functionality of my original plans and remake them in all sorts of odd symmetries which, while architecturally intriguing, generally sacrificed many practical considerations. He also, without fail, made everything closer. Passageways would be narrowed and sleeping quarters shrunk, until a building designed to hold 300 paupers would be remade to house almost twice that. As I mentioned before, I have no objection to harsh conditions within the workhouse to dissuade the idle from taking residence there. The cramped plans that George would present me bordered upon the claustrophobic, and I was generally unable to use them. Each time I told him so, his face would tighten in momentary anger, and his lips would go white. Then I would watch as he took that rage and discarded it, once again becoming the genial, if somewhat serious, young man I had first met. It was an odd sight. When his father died in 1834, it came as no great surprise to me that he chose to resign from my service. He told me he considered it necessary to become the provider for his family, though I have my suspicions, he was also eager to no longer have his designs subject to my scrutiny. I wished him well, naturally, but could not honestly say I was not somewhat relieved by his departure. It was shortly after this I received an invitation to a small social gathering hosted by Henry Roberts. It was there that I met Sir Robert Smurf. He was a tall man,
Evil
with
architecture.
sharp, almost saturnine features and eyes that seemed to regard you in ratios and pounds of raw material. He was polite and gregarious, but I found him difficult to talk to at length, as he seemed to be forever further ahead in the conversation than I was. I could never be sure whether or not I was boring him. When I realized that George was not present and there was no sign of his imminent arrival, I resolved to raise the matter with Sir Robert regarding what exactly his tutelage had entailed. The mention of the name George Gilbert Scott, Sir Robert's face flushed suddenly with anger in a manner not entirely unlike that of his protégé. He asked me what my interest was in Mr. Scott, and I told him that he had until recently been engaged as my assistant. At this, Sir Robert gave a small laugh of satisfaction and told me I did not realize exactly how lucky an escape I may have had. I asked again what exactly his training had entailed, and Sir Robert stared at me for a silent minute before he finally nodded his head. Balance, he told me. Equilibrium. The hardest thing for an architect to achieve. Symmetry is easy, but does not in and of itself result in balance. To stir the feelings of man, to create a small place of being, divorced from the rest of the world, while still retaining that balance, is the true goal of the architect. I had never heard my profession talked of with such conviction and fire before, and I will not lie to you, Joan, that the look in his eyes when he spoke scared me.
Well,
Without prompting, his tirade continued, and he began to talk about George, about shortcuts and symmetry, and a patron that the young fool did not understand. I could follow very little of it, and it seemed to be decidedly removed from anything that I would consider architecture, but whatever it was that Sir Robert had been teaching George, it appeared the lessons had been put to less noble use than he had intended. It was at this point that Henry noticed Sir Robert's agitation from across the room and came over to gently usher him away to the smoking room. He sent me a glance of mild reproach as he led his mentor away, and I was left standing there in the middle of the room, utterly confused and rather shaken. I resolved to avoid, where possible, having anything further to do with George, and continued with my own works. I heard he had set himself up with the construction of workhouses according to his own designs. He had taken on a partner by the name of William Bonifan Moffat, a builder's son with no moral character to recommend him of any sort. They vigorously canvassed several district guardians and managed to acquire several commissions that had previously been mine. Needless to say, I was rather taken aback by this utter lack of professional etiquette, but I was not without other projects, so I endeavored to ignore it, and leave him to whatever squalid interments he cared to build. It was in September of '36 that it happened, shortly after George and Moffat had finally opened the first of their workhouses. I didn't realize that was what had happened until afterwards, ensconced as I had been in my own work. Darkness had fallen, and still I was busy, lit by the reassuring glow of a dozen candles. There was no clock in the workshop, a deliberate choice to stop the lateness of the hour disturbing
I have
me.
nothing much to say.
I expected to have been somewhere past midnight when I heard them. Footsteps. Heavy, thudding footsteps.
Music starts playing. Oh no.
Clack of a sturdy cane. My assistants had locked all the doors when they left for the evening, and through the silence of my study I could not have missed the sound of them opening again. To my dying
Ripped locks.
I will aver that no one entered the building before I heard the footsteps approach. As their heavy tread grew closer and the clack of the cane struck louder, with quiet malice, I heard another sound beneath them. The jangle of keys. I have never in all of my life been possessed by such a fear as I was then. The walls and floor seemed to rise towards me, stealing the air from my lungs until I swear that I could feel the splinters from the ceiling digging into the soft skin of my face. I couldn't move as the thudding boot tread came to a halt outside the door, and the cane came to rest with a final whack. I waited. I waited to have the last vestiges of life squeezed from me by whatever this was. I don't know how much time passed. And then, as though suddenly sloughing off a heavy cloak. The weight fell from me. The room returned to its natural proportions, which is to say it never truly changed, I think. It is hard to describe exactly, Jonah, so you will forgive my vagaries. I rose to my feet, and in a moment of foolhardy bravery that I doubt I shall ever truly understand, I grabbed a candle and ran to the door, flinging it open. I saw a figure walking away through the door to one of the clerk's offices. It was short and wide, and I could see the wood of the floor bow beneath its huge boots. It wore a tall black hat, and only the thinnest wisps of grey hair were visible below. In its coarse, ruddy hand it held a hard-worn black cane, tipped with iron. Then the door closed behind it and it was gone. I followed into the room behind it, but it was empty. There was no sign of the man, or whatever it was that had gone in before me. The window was sealed, and there was nowhere for someone at that side to hide. Still I searched. I wasn't sure what else to do. Even the heavy boot prints seemed to have vanished. What I did manage to find, however, fallen behind one of the writing desks, was one of George Gilbert Scott's workhouse designs. There is, of course, no way to be certain of any connection between the two events, but that did little to quell the scalding rage in my breast as I strode out of my door the next morning. I took a cab to George's office, where I was informed that he was at his workhouse site with Moffat, and took another cab. I found the site in a state of some commotion, with my former assistant standing next to a high stone wall, arguing with a labourer who seemed quite distraught. He was gesturing wildly at an area of the wall, while another man, who I seemed to be Moffat, tried to calm him down. As I approached, I began to make out what the labourer was saying. He was asking after someone he referred to as the governor, while Moffat was trying very patiently to explain that no governor had yet been appointed to the workhouse. The labourer didn't seem to be paying this point much mind, however. He kept repeating that the governor had come to see Harry. He did not say who Harry was, but I assume an acquaintance of his. He said he knew it was the governor because of the jangle of his keys. He said that the governor had called Harry idle. It was at this point I was finally close enough to see the wall he was pointing at with such excitement. At first I thought they were worms, small and pale against the brickwork, but as I got closer I saw them clearly. Extending from the unblemished, solid stone of the workhouse wall were 4 fingertips. The labourer repeated it again. The governor had called Harry idle. I returned to George's documents and left. I trust you will understand now, Jonah, why I have been avoiding the company of my fellows these last few years. I have always
When you get built into a wall.
making a notation of my story. But as I finally have everything prepared for my move to New Zealand, I would feel like I had slighted you, but I left without sharing my tale. Do with it as you will. I am done. Sincerely yours, Samson Kempthorpe. End statement. Obviously trying to trace disappearances and deaths in Victorian workhouses is an exercise in futility, so I'm loath to even try. More importantly, who is Robert Smirk? I've read every book I've
He's a guy who worshipped the devil.
not many.
But that was also an architect.
This other side to him, apparently at the heart of strange buildings and architecture all over London. Now what? Students? Apprentices? If Henry Roberts was a student of some sort of paranormal construction methods, it doesn't appear to show up in any of his buildings, save perhaps for Fishmonger's Hall, which he designed along with Sir George Gilbert Scott for the Worshipful Company of Fishmongers in 1834. It is reportedly a hotbed for low-key hauntings, but nothing of the magnitude we've heard from others. Scott is concerning, however. While Smirk seems to have built a handful of notable buildings around London, Sir George Gilbert Scott is responsible for landmarks such as St Pancras Station, the Albert Memorial, and the restoration of Westminster Abbey. If his buildings have similar quirks, then... well, to be honest, I don't know what that would mean, but I doubt it would. That said, there have been no reports
God, there's so many names.
of paranormal or supernatural disturbance in any still-standing building designed by Scott. That should somehow it doesn't. End recording. I'm sorry?
Are you in trouble?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, there was a policewoman asking after you. You know, the one who came to look into Gertrude.
Basira. When was this?
Yesterday. You were at physical therapy.
Did she say
Rip.
what?
No. It was a bit weird, really. I've seen her around here a few times before, actually. I don't trust her.
Sorry, what?
Well, I asked if she had anything new to report on Gertrude, and she just said no, and then mumbled a question about when you'd be back. Then she left. It was weird. She's weird.
It's almost like they're conspiring.
Police, do you, Tim?
Well, you do know I'm the finest cat burglar in all of Bromley.
Tim.
Okay, so seriously, I don't get why she keeps coming back round here outside of the investigation.
She's, I'm helping her with some of the investigation. Off the record.
Oh.
John, you're so
Say no
sus.
more.
Tim,
Don't worry. I'm cool. Good work, boss.
oh, no, Tim, that's
Tim, shut up.
not what I...
If I can dig anything else out on
It's
Scott,
really
and I'll
not
let you
my-
know if she comes back.
Yeah, that really isn't my... And supplemental.
That was so mental. Rip. People wanted me to react to that. I don't know why. There was a bunch of shit. More like Robert Smoke stuff. More elaboration. Claustrophobia stuff. And apparently being so claustrophobic you get stuck in the wall. Something about a governor. Robert Smoke's proteges, I guess. George, I'm reading this already. Do. Someone getting trapped in the wall. The governor. The governor. Okay. Let's smoke. There was some like cult listings. I thought like he attended some weird church meetings or something and built some weird churches or something. I thought that was mentioned in a previous episode. Robert Smoke, Henry Robert and things. Fishmonger's Hall. Is that familiar? I don't know. To work on St. Pancras Station, Albert Memorial, and the restoration of Westminster Abbey. Are those like foreshadowing, or have we heard of those before? Because they seem very specific. Like you mentioned, like 4 fucking buildings. Like either something's gonna happen in those buildings, we're gonna find stuff that happened in those buildings, or we've already heard about these buildings. He mistakenly assumes that she and John are romantically involved. Oh yeah, I forgot. We learned like was it last episode or something? We learned like last episode that fucking Tim. He sleeps around. He's a bi stereotype. Tim, no. Tim, why? No, Tim. Don't be the bi stereotype. No. I should have known though. He gives off that vibe. Yeah, he does give off that vibe. Tim. I'm glad we're getting more Tim. We didn't get much of him in season 1 until like the end, and he talked once, and then I guess the other people got statements, and then Tim didn't until the end, which, you know. But yeah. Tim, no, don't be the stereotype. No, Tim. It's okay. Beloved. Okay. I'm gonna listen to High Pressure. Let's see. Next episode. Let's go.
We really
No ads.
Voice of the rain and the trees and the fog of a town called the Fort. Local horrors meet. Join in each week as chapter by chapter you get your podcast.
Elias Bouchard in the Magnus Archives.
Hi.
I wanted to let you know that we're looking for some more sound editors from
No,
anywhere around the world.
this is from like 3 years ago. It's fine. I don't think it's gonna be time sometimes since dinner, so I skipped the spooky music. Sorry, spooky music, you're really good, but I skipped you.
Statement of Antonia Haley regarding a deep dive that took place near Sable
More
Island,
diving
Nova
shit.
Scotia,
Not
in
long,
August
Lost John's Cave. I keep trying to say Long John's Cave.
January
Stop.
7th, 2008.
2008.
Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I should be dead, really. It's a weird feeling. You ever had a near-death experience? I've had a few. They're not uncommon in my line of work, but this, it feels different. It's not that I put myself in danger and managed not to die. I should be dead. Decompression sickness that severe is almost never survivable, and I should have had an embolism. The fact that I didn't, blind luck.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to reconcile yourself with avoiding a death that you feel should have been yours. If there'd been others with me who didn't make it, if I could write it off as survivor's guilt, but I was alone. Do you ever get that? Of course you don't.
Just universal survivor's guilt. In the sum of the universe, I should have died, and everyone else who has died. So I was guilt, I guess.
It was barely deeper than a swimming pool, but it was enough to instill a lifelong passion for it.
Pop off.
I got fully qualified as soon as I was legally able and almost flunked out of college because I was always running off to some dive or other. I must have missed more classes than I went to by the end. I scraped by, but as it turned out, even if I hadn't, it wouldn't have mattered too much, as it wasn't my psychology major that got me my first job after graduation.
Psychology major.
It was diving. I worked at a marine salvage company based off the coast of Nova Scotia. You'll forgive me if I don't give their name. I still hold out hope I might go back to work there someday, and I'd feel like an asshole dragging their name through the mud, even if it is just to you and your strict confidentiality procedures. Using name anyway, since it actually refers to two distinct locations along the eastern coast of North America, both notorious hotspots for shipwrecks. In this case, I'm talking about the one of Sable Island in Nova Scotia. The waters there are some of the roughest, where the Gulf Stream hits the Labrador Current, and depending on which historical records you believe, there could be anything from 400 to 600 shipwrecks down there. And that's only from when the European settlers first arrived. Normally, it's not the sort of place where we would accept jobs. It's too dangerous to send a salvage crew in when the waters are that unpredictable. But this time was different. Maybe the old man was just a real sweet talker, or maybe he swipped the captain, a leathery old cuss by the name of Morton Kemp, just enough extra under the table that he fudged the location on the release forms. Either way, word came down that we were doing a dive off Sable Island. None of that was to say the captain was stupid about it. We kept a very close eye on the meteorological reports and only headed into the graveyard when we were certain we'd have a window of relatively calm seas to do it. It helped that the job was relatively simple. The old man, Simon Fairchild, had come to us claiming that he had pinpointed the location he believed his great-grandfather's sailing yacht had been sunk almost 120 years ago, and he was keen to retrieve any heirlooms or curios he could from it. The only thing interesting or unusual about his story was the amount of money he was willing to throw around to back it up. It was certainly enough to get us dropping anchor 100 miles from the coast on a hot, sunny morning at the end of August. The journey out had been a bit subdued. Normally, me and Julio Hernandez, the other diver on the crew, would spend our time chatting, playing cards, and once even screwing, though we generally don't talk about that. This time we had to babysit Mr. Fairchild, who had stubbornly insisted that he make the journey with us. Again, this wouldn't normally have been an option, but the guy was not shy about throwing his money around. He must have been pushing 100 years old, just a tiny pink skeleton of a man, sat in the corner watching us the whole trip. It was hard to get any sort of friendly chat going with him perched there like some sort of vulture. I tried to talk to him a few times, but he only seemed interested in discussing this shipwreck and how preserved I thought everything might be. I told him I had no idea, as it really wasn't my area. I was just the diver. He didn't say much to me after that. When we hit the graveyard, the sea was almost completely still, far more so than I would have expected, even given the weather predictions we'd been working on. It didn't strike me as odd at the time, just an unexpected bit of help with the job. Initial checks managed to locate. The old man was practically dancing with joy, and I was genuinely concerned he might give himself a heart attack. We suited up and prepared to go under. The wreck was at a depth of 160 feet, which meant we'd be in a high-pressure environment, but we shouldn't need hypoxic gas or full-pressure suits, which was something of a relief. Julio made his prayers, Captain Kemp gave us a stern nod, and into the water we went. As I went in, I thought I heard Simon, the old man, shout after me, but I couldn't make it out. And then the world was nothing but silent blue. I'd expected the water to be warmer, given the temperature on the surface, but the chill hit me all at once, and it took a moment to get to grips with it. I saw Julio next to me, a few yards away, and with a thumbs up, we began to dive down towards the sunken boat. Most people don't appreciate how quickly it gets dark underwater. You don't need to be nearly as deep as you think before the sun is just the faintest change in the water hues. If you're not careful, it's easy to forget which way is up and become lost in the murky depths. But Julio and I were a well-practiced team, and we weren't going so far down as to face any darkness that our torches couldn't handle. It was during that descent, when I saw that our 2 points of light were the only signs of movement down there, that I noticed the absence of life. I wasn't particularly worried by this. If anything, I was rather relieved. Anyone who's been diving more than a few years will be able to tell you of at least one close call with a shark, and I'd had 2 so far, so the less movement the better as far as I was concerned. Still, it was a surprise that we hadn't seen even a single school of fish on our journey to the sea floor. And once we were down there, it was just as lifeless. I gestured my confusion to Julio, but he just shrugged and started over towards the wreck. Down there, deep below the surface, I find myself sometimes entering an almost meditative state. You can feel the weight of the world, a world you were never meant to be part of, pressing in on you from all directions. A constant, overpowering awareness of your own breathing, of how little there is between you and the very space around you that is completely hostile to your existence. The danger is real, as is the faint, hardened fear in your gut. But I've always found that it sometimes put me in a state not too unlike how it feels staring into the flames of a fire. Hypnotic. My mind cleared of all thoughts but the dull, pulsing rush of adrenaline. That feeling was so strong here that I almost swam past the Maria Fairchild completely. Julio was already inside, and I quickly located a large enough tear in the hull and made my own entrance. The yacht was bigger than I had thought when viewing it from the boat, but the layout was not complicated, and we already had quite a good idea about where would be best to look for the sort of antiques and sentimental treasures that Simon wanted. Julio had taken the bedroom, so I started on the bridge. It was certainly an impressive sight. A late 19th century steam yacht, slightly decayed from its time on the ocean floor, but all in all, astoundingly well preserved. I looked over the chair and the various panels and controls, but could find nothing which could be classed as an easily removable heirloom, although I did make a mental note of which bits of the bridge were well enough preserved that they might be worth removing. It would need more equipment than we had with us, but I could suggest it to Simon if we returned empty-handed. I checked in on Julio, but he was still busy ransacking the bedroom, so I decided to do a sweep of the engine room. It was there I found the hole. It was large, maybe 7 feet in diameter, not unlike the one I had used to get into the wreck in the first place. There was something about it that immediately put me on edge. The shape was too regular somehow. The water outside it was too dark. And it took me a few seconds to notice this. The direction of the tearing seems to indicate it had been made from the inside out. I dropped the rusted wrench I had been examining and let it float slowly towards the floor as I made my way to the hole. I gripped the side and looked through. As soon as I put my head through, I felt a change wash
Not the
over me.
music. Okay.
Pressure increased all at once, becoming so intense that I screamed in surprise and pain as my head erupted in agony. The pressure was upon my whole body now, and I was finding it hard to move with the crushing weight on every part of me. My eyes bulged as I stared forward, and I saw 2 things. The first was that below the hole there was no sea floor, just a deep and endless expanse of empty water, as though the boat were on a cliff edge. The second was that it was far, far too dark. The deepest that humans can survive in the ocean is the mesopelagic zone, which begins roughly 650 feet below the surface. It is colloquially known among oceanographers as the Twilight Zone.
That's the Twilight Zone.
Where only the faintest of light penetrates from the sun.
In my Magnus Archives podcast.
Shades of darkness. Down that far, any glow that makes it is so diffused as to be utterly useless stared out in terror, I was absolutely sure that there was no other. And I could swim as far as I liked.
It kind of sounds like Freefall.
There would never be anything but water.
And I love Freefall. Freefall is one of my favorites.
It was only
In
a shadow
concept.
in the dark, but it was there. And it was huge. It stretched from one side of my vision to the other, and as I fought against the pressure to turn my aching head, I still couldn't see the end of it. Only its blurred outline was slightly better contrasted against the lighter shade of the twilight water that surrounded it. I could not see the ends of it. It was so big it made me lightheaded to think about it, to try and place myself on some believable scale against it. I think it was a hand, but I could not see enough to be sure.
In the ocean?
It moved, slowly but
I thought this was
clearly,
like
and I
some
realized how far away
Subnautica type, like,
as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I could see nothing else, and I screamed. It was the jagged metal of the hole itself that saved me in the end. As I cried out in horror, I felt the sharp edges of it digging into my hands, and they gripped it, and the unexpected burst of pain snapped me out of whatever it was that held me in place. With a surge of strength, I pushed myself back into the boat, and I felt the pressure lift all at once. Of course, this brought its own set of problems, but I didn't care. The lightheadedness was already setting in, and my vision was blurring when I swam out of the sunken ship and headed towards the surface at full speed, ignoring all decompression procedures. I blacked out 30 feet from the surface. I have vague memories of the trip back, fading in and out of consciousness, feeling the worst I have ever felt in my life. Then I recall a helicopter, shouting, and finally waking up fully in a hospital bed.
I didn't think it was a hand.
He immediately laid into me, calling me all sorts of horrendous names before informing me exactly how serious my condition had been, and how lucky I was to be alive. I should be dead, he told me, and I know he was right. I left the company soon afterwards. I still plan to go back someday, but it'll be a while longer before I'm comfortable in the water again. Julio never came to visit me in hospital, and I was unable to get in contact with him after I was discharged. I hope he's all right. I did ask Captain Kemp what happened to the job after I left, as I also hadn't seen the old man since that morning. The captain got a strange look in his eyes then, and gazed out of the window with a scowl I had never seen in his face before. The sea is a dangerous place, he said, and walked away. Statement ends. No real follow-up can be made to this statement, as it all took place in Canadian territory. We don't have the
Rip.
problems over there that we do here.
No,
Not
not
to mention the one
Canada.
that Clean appears to be a massive overlapping and conflicting police, coast guard, and port authority reports. We could spend years trying to unravel this one case if we had a mind to, and I, for one, do not. We weren't even able to glean sufficient information to track down any of those mentioned in the statement, aside from Captain Morton Kemp, who now runs boat tours near Winnipeg and declined to comment on it in the strongest possible terms. Instead, I will focus on Simon Fairchild, who I recall may have come up in case 00220010, along with a young woman. I may have encountered Fairchild before, or it
The
may
guy
be
in the
a
plane?
coincidence of names. One of my first cases as a researcher for the Institute in 2012 was looking into the history of a jeweller's in Hackney that had reported cases becoming cracked in the night. Nothing was ever taken, but each morning it would be like a heavy weight had been dropped upon them. Looking into it, it turned out that the jewellers had, in the 1930s, belonged to a con artist and fence who had attracted the displeasure of the local population. When one particularly irate customer threw him out of a fourth-floor window into a crowded street at midday, no one claimed to have seen anything. A minor possible haunting with a decidedly pedestrian backstory, but notable because while I was never able to discover the original name of the con artist, one of his many, many aliases was Simon Fairchild, and it appeared on several business listings around the time. Whether it's a coincidence or not is something of a moot point at this stage, however. A cursory bit of research reveals the Fairchilds in question to be an exceptionally wealthy family based down in Cornwall. No real business to speak of, but it appears they've invested very wisely in aerospace technology, shipping logistics, and underwater drilling and construction. Whatever their origin, I feel it's worth keeping an eye on them. End recording.
Supplemental.
Supplemental. I had a strange conversation with Sasha earlier today. I've
Sas?
been doing some research into her, but there's little to go on, save that she worked in artifact storage. I decided to pay it a short visit to acquaint myself with any new acquisitions. Not much worth reporting, really. A new oak wardrobe, light is apparently unable to penetrate. A carved rock eye they keep in a black velvet bag, apparently it interferes with the video cameras otherwise. And a rather nasty-looking scalpel that is supposedly rife with disease, no matter what they use to sterilize or disinfect it.
SCPs.
Hermetically sealed plastic box. I stumbled across Sasha staring at that damn table again. Luckily, I had the wherewithal to bring my tape recorder and managed to turn it unnoticed. Recording follows. It's fascinating, isn't it? In the literal sense, I mean.
Yes. Sometimes I can't pull myself away from it.
This is
Recent events
fuck.
I've been trying to figure out.
I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. I've been talking about how Sasha was replaced just like that guy in the apartment in like episode 2. And I'm an idiot because I forgot that that's the same guy with the table. That's where the table's from. And Sasha's last tape recording that we saw, was it her staring at the table? It was her staring at the table, wasn't it? During the season 1 finale, it was totally her staring at the table. When Jane Prentice was coming, I thought I forgot exactly how it went, but she was staring at the frickin' table, wasn't she? I'm a fool. It's exactly that. I forgot. Like, I connected the dots between Sasha being completely replaced and no one seeming to notice, and everyone thinking that it was still her. Like, I connected that dot with the guy that disappeared and got replaced in that early episode. But then, like, I frickin' forgot somehow that was the guy with the table. And the table. The fucking table. And then, so she got replaced by the table thing. And the thing that replaced that guy was probably something to do with the table too. I forgot and I'm an idiot. It's the frickin' table that replaced her. Or something to do with the table. And it's the same table as the guy that got frickin' replaced as well. I'm an idiot. I forgot about the frickin' table. Why did I just forgot about the table. I'm a fool. It was so obvious. That's immediate confirmation of my theory that it was the same thing that replaced that guy. Oh my god, I'm a fool. Okay, that makes sense. That makes so much sense.
No, it isn't. I've always seen it more like a web.
I guess it has caught us in its own way.
I don't think we're the first to be caught.
No?
I believe it caught Graham as well.
I thought that was... Whatever crawled through his window. Unless you think they're linked somehow.
I doubt it. It didn't sound like the sort of thing that would want to be bound to an object.
I suppose. And we haven't seen any long-limbed stalkers, so... Let's concentrate on the table.
Agreed. If you'll excuse me.
Of course. Odd, but not alarming, though I think I may discuss restricting her access to the table with Elias. Oh, and I've found out where she's been going when she takes extra long lunch breaks. It seems harmless enough, but I admit I'm a bit baffled. Every few days, she travels up to Baker Street to spend anywhere from 10 minutes to a full hour in Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And supplement.
Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. I've been there. I've been to that place in different locations multiple times. That's weird. Madame Tussauds. Interesting. What does that imply? It doesn't imply anything, basically. At this point, we don't know anything about this creature, or what it's doing, or, like, why is it replacing people, or whatever. Table, question mark? Okay. But I guess, just thematically, like, with what we know, healing Madame Tussauds, I guess it's associated with, like, fakeness? Replications of people is one thing. Replicating people. Like fake, like artificial recreations of people. I think that's it. That's a big connection, actually. That's a good connection between whatever's happening now and that, and whatever's happening to Sasha and whatever happened to that guy. That's a pretty okay connection. That's as far as I'm gonna get without any more information. That's a cool, I guess, thematic link, but we need to learn more about this thing to know what's going on. Yeah, free fall. It sounded exactly like free fall. The freaking it suddenly looking down and there's nothing there, and looking up and there's nothing there, and it's like the whole thing just goes on forever. I loved free fall. Free fall is like one of my. I just like the concept of it. It freaked me out. I like really focused on trying to imagine what that would be like, and that was really interesting to me. I really like the concept of like a guy gets eaten by the sky. We got more about John being a researcher, which is interesting. Jewelry. To O'Connor's and friends. No one saw him fall. He got thrown out of a window and no one saw him fall. That's kind of like that one guy. The guy who jumped out a window and said, "The best!" And I was like, "The best?" And yeah, that's kind of like that guy. No one saw him impact, even though he jumped out of the clock tower. So the Connors were just an original name. Sorry, Fairchild. Every freaking somebody calls it not Sasha, so it's like, how obvious can you be? Okay, who he found still at table. Disagrees with the design being a fractal. But why? We've seen so many fractals mentioned all the time. Is it not a fractal? Like, is it offensive to call it a fractal? How dare you call me a fractal? I don't know. More like a web, and she was Graham, that's his name. Graham, to be caught in it. How about you, Sasha? Okay. Then crawled through his window, the table linked. But she denies and says the creature wouldn't like to be linked to an object. But you also got replaced, same as this guy, and the only connection between you two is the table. So is the creature that crawled into his window something completely separate from the table which replaced him and Sasha? I have no clue what's going on. But she's like, is she like a manifestation of this table creature right now? Because she took offense to the fact that that creature would be linked to an object. So is it not the object at all? What is it? Like, I don't know. Two sides of Wax Museum. Yeah, they talk about the new acquisitions. Literally SCP objects. Rock guy causes interference, which light can't penetrate. Disease-ridden scalpel wood that cannot be washed off. It literally sounds like SCPs. Okay, continuity is already mentioned. Job in question. Simon Fairchild. Yeah, this old guy, Simon Fairchild, pink skeleton of a man, at discovery something well for wait. Could not make out the word. Fairchild shouted at them, and she couldn't make out the words. I thought it was a guy throughout this entire. I always do this. I can never tell the gender of the person. I always guess wrong for some reason. Sometimes I think it's a woman and it's a guy, and sometimes I think it's a guy and it's a woman. And I'm always wrong. Whenever I assume, I'm wrong. Fairchild shouting at them, just like he talked to the guy in Freefall, saying something like "enjoy sky blue" or some schneik. I don't know. Like, that's interesting. Literally probably the same fucking thing he did in Freefall. That's interesting. The complete lifelessness in the sea. Heirlooms. The pressure increased. Only empty water. Too dark. Huge shadow. She said it might have been a hand. I thought she was like something that's terrifying to me. The thought of gigantic animals somewhere in the sea. Because the sea is so unexplored. The sea is like a perfect horror story location. The oceans, I mean. Like, insanely good horror activity. Because it's real. That's real horror. How much we don't know about the sea is actual horror. Like, and we put this terrifying thing is probably down there. I thought it was gonna be like a freaking giant, terrifying Cthulhu monster thing, but no, a hand? That was not what I expected. A giant hand? How big would that hand have to be for it to look around and not see the edges of it and come closer even though it was so far away? How does that even work? How does perspective work? Rush out of the water. Blacked out. Cannon. RIP Canada, North America. Okay, interesting. That's it for now. Next one I think I'm reacting to is I think Personal Space 27, maybe. Personal Space, and then Observer, and then I think I'm definitely going to try binary. Yeah, I'm gonna try definitely to reach for binary. Those episodes were interesting. We had a bunch of people that we already knew about, a bunch of mysterious figures that cause a bunch of wacky shenanigans. Those people, we learned more about them. We heard about them again. The Simon guy, Simon Fairchild, and the Robert Smirk, the what's it called? It's not archaeologist, architect. The architect. We heard more about these two people. Interesting. I don't know why I was told to react to these in particular. Nothing like super big happened, like a new door. Which these two were rated on the same level of recommendation as the new door, and I'm angry about that because the new door was so cool. But it's probably going to be these are probably going to be worth a lot in hindsight or something. I don't know. But interesting. All the episodes are good, by the way. So all episodes relate to each other and are very cool. But I don't know why these in particular they asked me to do. Maybe I don't know. I guess starting off into the next dimension. I have to eat dinner. Interesting episodes.